Okay.
Aye.
In 1993, I gave birth to a 5-pound baby girl. It was the happiest day of me and my husband's life, but nothing could prepare us for what was going to happen. Today I'm going to persuade you that having and keeping a baby that has schizophrenia is the best thing to do for the child as well as yourself. I will give the reasons why you should not give up the child to the state and why it is the best interest of the child. For those of you who think is a good idea, I will show you why it is not. I got my experience from raising a child who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and websites as well. She was diagnosed at the age of 10 with paranoid schizophrenia, and we raised her. There was a lot of ups and downs, mainly downs most of the time, but we made it through it. There was times when she would kick my wall, she broke dishes, she threw temper tantrums, she'd cry all the time. Never knew what was wrong. One day she come into the dining room and sat down and started laughing and asked me if I could hear them because they were talking about me. And I asked her, no, why? And she said, because they're right there on the wall. Don't you see them? Well, immediately I started to freak out, but that was the wrong reaction. So I called the doctor and her psychiatrist and said that she needed to be seen, and I made an appointment. A couple of weeks later, I came home from work and she was in the bedroom crying, and I went in there and I sat down beside her and I asked her what was wrong, and she said the voices told her to kill her brother. And that was an eye-opener. So I called the doctor back and he's seen her within a couple of days. So how the child can be affected by this brain disorder is that they see things that aren't there. They're not realistically all together. They have a hard time understanding and coping with the situation. They feel isolated, extremely isolated, and left out in the cold. So I brought the MRI scan data from a childhood onset schizophrenia. The area colored in light and dark blue show the fastest tissue loss in a child with schizophrenia. So you can see that most of the common sense decisions that are made by a normal child cannot be made by a child that has schizophrenia. According to the National Alliance on Medical Illness, or the NAMI.org, the last access was September of 2011. Schizophrenia in children is extremely rare. According to them, it is occurring in 1 out of 30,000 children. That is about one. That would be about 133 that were born this year with this condition. Some people think it's okay to give the child to the state to raise, but I don't think that's a good idea. It makes the situation worse because the child already has a very low self-esteem, a high suicide rate, and they don't feel, and they would really feel abandoned by the parent if you did that. No one needs to fear the condition before they usually can be reasoned with. The child with the right medication and the right counseling can live a productive life. But what is the first thing that most people think of when they hear the word psycho, schizophrenia. To me, the first thing I think of is The Shining or Silence of the Lambs. Most generally, schizophrenia people have a tendency to be violent, but you only hear about the ones that are. You don't hear about the ones that aren't. And in society, the only thing that matters is home base for the child, because the sense of security that they feel at home gives them the sense of security to live and function in real society. The parents feel that that is their fault because genetically it is passed down through generations. According to understandingschizophrenia.org, last access of 12/9 of 2012, schizophrenia runs in the family. Just because one person in the family has schizophrenia certainly does not mean that everybody does. And the effect on the siblings, when I was raising Tessa, I had Zach, her older brother. It has had a long-lasting effect on him, having to pull her off of me when she was beating me, having to walk on eggshells when he's around her to make sure to not upset her, to have to pull her away from the wall from beating it in. He's more than once stopped her from physically harming me. But I would never ever give her up to the state to raise, mainly because I didn't know what they would do with her. Or were they going to shoot her with needles? Were they going to over-medicate her? It's just not a good scene. Some people don't want to wrap their heads around the fact that their child has anything wrong with them. According to understandingschizophrenia.org, schizophrenia does run in the family. And it is really hard to wrap your head around the fact that you have a child that has schizophrenia. And I could have never given her to the state to raise, even though it was hard at times. I wouldn't have changed it for anything. And don't give up your child to the state to raise. Though they have a mental condition, it is better to raise them themselves. At least you know what type of treatment they are getting. Although many may have a taboo about speaking on this topic, it is important to remember that there are thousands of us that have this condition. And you never know if the person next to you in the supermarket or at school has it. My thought to you is to make sure you know what you're taking, what you're talking about before you speak about it. It does make for an interesting topic. According to understandingschizophrenia.org, schizophrenia is not rare. Around 1 in 100 people will develop schizophrenia at some time in their life. You can't always judge a book by its cover. Done.